So, welcome back for those who decided to participate in the second webinar of today. If you haven't participated the first one, just briefly to introduce myself, my name is Andrea Tonč and I'm working as a senior grant expert for the TAXO team. At the first session that was run today morning, I was presenting the guidelines for applicants under the newly published civil society facility and the media program call for proposals. Now in this webinar, the second one, I will explore more the topic of the structure of the concept note in the EU application procedure. But at the beginning, I will talk a little bit about one new novelty in the approach that we are facing now in our EU-funded call for proposals, and this is the theory of change, which is actually contributing to enriching our well-known LogFrame approach. So, first part of my presentation now in this webinar number 2 will be sort of reminder on the importance of the log framework approach and its relation with the theory of change and how this reflects on the logical framework format that you will be supposed to fill in, however, in the process of submitting the full applications. However, the development of the proposal is a process, and even for the concept note, which actually presents the justification of the relevance of the idea and actually the sort of the summary of the project idea, we have to provide information on the objectives, on the results, on the activities, calculate estimation cost, etc. In the second part, we will be talking about the structure of the concept note, and here again I actually divided this part into 2 sections. One will be dedicated to the actual structure of the concept note format of the application form, and then I will make a link with the evaluation criteria under this call, and I will present to you evaluation grid under this call for the concept note evaluation. Of course, we will have we will have time for some questions. You are welcome to actually start asking, or better say writing in the chat section your questions, and then in order to foster also some dynamic and participation from your side, you are welcome to start asking them, and I will do my best to facilitate during the session, not to just wait the end of the presentation. So, what actually the theory of change is bringing to us? What is novelty? If you have already experienced development of any kind of proposal, not only for the EU funding, you definitely went through all phases of the one proposal development and planning based on something that we all know, the logical framework approach. This approach is primarily objective-oriented project planning. It is focused on the objectives, and it actually analyzes the situation on which we are relating, identifying the problem, defining our actions and specific objectives in terms to the long-term objective we want to achieve. In this whole process, it was noticed that not enough emphasis was given to the level of the results, including outputs, outcomes, and impact. And therefore, that's how actually the theory of change has been introduced as a contribution to strengthening the linkages between the actual results in relation to the goal of our actions. When talking about the theory of change, this is essentially a comprehensive description and illustration of how and why desired change is expected to happen in particular context. It is focused in particular on mapping out or filling in what has been described as a missing middle between what a program or change initiatives does, its actually activities, and how this lead to desired goals being achieved. It does this by first identifying the desired long-term goals and then works back from these to identify all the conditions, actually meaning here outcomes, that must be in place and how this related to one another causally, meaning for the goals to occur. And that is why, for those who are the visual types among us, we have such a complex or in relation to logical framework, messy, the diagram, what actually the theory of change presents, because it shows to us the bigger picture with all possible pathways. While the logical framework shows just the pathway that our program deals with, and that's why it looks so clear. The theory of change as such now in the context here what we are talking about has no intention to actually replace the logical framework. It is providing to us now an added value in our approach toward development of our proposals. That's important to know. Through the years, it was noticed that while the number of projects have been evaluated, the actual presentation of the results at all levels and in relation to goals was not strength enough. It was very often the situation that we faced a number of projects for which we could say that yes, they completed and they produced outputs, but when we are talking about the actual outcomes and especially about impact, we actually found the results pretty much weak. And that's why now we are actually discussing how to strengthen the actual position of the results as such. At one point, when I will go more into the logical framework template with you, you will also see that the position of the what was the situation before the project start or at the beginning and at the end is also emphasized. And this is exactly because of it, since the majority of projects was, let's say, mainly output based. And that was very much visible at the level of the indicators. So I saw many proposals and even awarded proposals, very good proposals, but the indicators that actually have to describe the change were very output based, very general, without actually giving us even a basic standpoint to actually measure a change. So now we have addition to our current tool for planning and monitoring, which instead of focusing only on logical steps and details of intervention is focusing on change. It's not only linear, but actually circular, including feedback loops. So it actually stimulates much more on the constant asking ourselves what is actually change that occurred because we organized a workshop. What is the actual change occurred because the youth that were trained to start their own business? What is happening? What is the result of that? And how is that leading to achievement of the long-term goal? So, as I said, we are not we are not replacing the LogFrame approach with the theory of change. The current LogFrame approach is actually now enriched with a new approach, and it will you will see from the application process and the questions that you are asked, the focus on the actual change and the actual results is much more present. Therefore, of course, it is expected that this will reflect on the quality of the proposals, but also on the overall quality and quantity of the achievements and actual changes that will happen as a result of implementation of the actions. So how actually now, if we try to combine what have been said until now, how is that reflected in actual terminology? What is the terminology from the LogFrame that is now enriched with the terminology in relation with the theory of change? So logic on intervention is now reflected in the terminology and meaning of the LogFrame as result chain. Overall objectives are reflected in impact, specific objectives to outcomes, outputs as results, and of course, activities further on. This is not some significant and huge change as such, but is a slightly change that will really reflect on the quality of the proposals and of course on the quality of the actions that will be actually implemented. And it will actually reflect on our overall communication about actions that we are planning and of course that we are implementing. Those of you that more in participating in proposal development and maybe on daily basis you are designing and implementing development actions and interventions, probably you noticed until now that in the latest version of the LogFrame, the section on indicators have been upgraded with additional columns, meaning additional space for providing information. And that is a baseline, current value, and target. Baseline is expecting to provide concrete indicator value at the starting of measuring. However, this can be also our current value from the point of our project proposal, meaning indicator value at the start of the project implementation. That was often very much missing in the current and even and of course previous versions of proposals, and we were very often ending only with final data, with something that is our target. So we would have information that target number is our actual indicator, for example, number of participants, but without having the information whether this is enough or not enough, etc. So this is the very important change at this point, and of course it will be very much important and helpful in actually defining the structure of our of target group of the interventions, since usually the indicators were very much related in relation to the target group. So, as example, a simple diagram to show how a project will trigger different levels of change from activities to impact, meaning that we have some, of course, inputs needed to implement activities. They are, of course, producing outputs. When we produce output, or we are planning to produce a particular output, we are, of course, discussing how this will reflect on the production of the outcomes, and at the end, what can be long-term effects produced by the action. However, now we are not ending because it's not linear. The theory of change stimulates us to again go back and to actually check, even in the proposal development and later on in the implementation, whether we are producing what was desired change, and whether there are some possible interventions that we can implement in order to strengthen the impact as such. To be more concrete, here are the actually three types of some interventions and actually similar examples. So let's say that our desired impact is to increase literacy. So to have increased literacy, of course, we actually have to increase school completion, but maybe that's not a requirement. Maybe some other outcome also can lead to increased literacy. However, of course, we will implement some activities, like in this case, we will buy some books and we will organize some training activities and so on. And this will result in, of course, more accession to the textbooks because they will be provided, or more teachers will be trained, and this will help to increase school completion. However, in our evaluation of the desired change, we actually have to check what are the other possibilities in other directions that can help to increase literacy. Usually, our way of communication until now, when talking about development interventions, was very much on what we are actually doing and not what we are going to achieve in terms of the change. And this is, in a simple way, the approach that from now on we have to work on to make it different. So I will now, after this introduction, transfer into the structure of the concept note. I see you are quiet and probably you are patient and actually waiting on direct inputs concerning the actual filling the application form and what is the required in the application form for the concept note. So the application as such has, let's say, three main elements. So one relates to description of the action. The another one relates to relevance of the action. And then the third one relates to actual presentation of the lead applicant, co-applicants, and affiliated entities. Just as a reminder, you probably noticed that sometimes I use the term action, sometimes the project, even like now I noticed I introduced development intervention. So in global term, the action and the project means the activities that are funded by the EU via grants, maybe some other financial instruments and so on. So do not be confused whether I'm using the term action or project, or you will see the same in the documentation for the application. And do not mix the action and activities. So the action is composed of activities. So let's assume that you now have in front of you the application form for the concept note, which you downloaded from the call for proposals documentation. You have in maximum availability of 5 pages to present your concept note, dividing on into two parts, on description of the action and relevance of the action. So as I already actually mentioned at the beginning, description of the action is sort of the summary of our idea and preparation process, and actually what we are going to do and what we want to achieve and how we see the change and how the stakeholders will be involved, etc. So we have really significant challenge in front of us in relation to maximum of 2 pages where we should actually present all this information. So I actually made on this slide a summary for you, what are the information that you have to present. So you are asked to write about the background of the action, meaning in short and something that you will explore more in the section on relevance. Analysis of the situation, what are the main problems and challenges, practically the reasons why you think you should implement this action. And in relation to this, what you want to achieve. Even objectives are presented in one separate table in the this application form. You are required to reflect on them here. Please do not just copy paste objectives saying, you know, this is the situation and these are now our objectives. Important is to make linkages all the time among all these subsections or sub questions that you are asked here. So you describe the background of the action and now saying, and that is because we are actually going toward these objectives. Further on, you ask important question about your stakeholders. In the webinar number 3, we will be actually talking about defining the problem, defining objectives, and also analysis of the stakeholders. So these are all preparatory actions before you actually sit down and start writing your concept note idea. Here, the questions about stakeholders also relates to analysis. Who are the stakeholders important for your action? What is their attitude toward the action, either positive or negative? And have you been in contact with them? In practice, very often actions are planning to cooperate during implementation or to target during the implementation, for example, some institutions. And then implementation starts, and then you have a problem because institutions are not interested to cooperate with you. They're confused why you are targeting them with the project, even they have been never consulted and such stuff. So that's why we have a question whether consultations been held with the stakeholders group. Here, briefly, you are outlining the intervention logic, indicating expected outputs, outcomes, and of course, impact. So all the results expected, all actually, of course, here briefly, main changes that are expected that will happen as a result of implementation of your action. Here, you have to, of course, mention and some main risks and assumptions toward their achievement. This is why it's the easiest way to use the LogFrame approach in the planning and designing, because then you will not forget such important details for the development of the good quality project idea into the project proposal. Of course, you have to reflect on the types of activities. So you are not going to present in detail activities you are going to implement, but like a main groups, main types of activities, and you are presenting any kind of the relationships they have among each other, because they are probably mutually connected. So don't just list the activities. Always each of the sections, as in line with the intervention logic and theory of change, connect, how they are mutually connected. The last point in this slide relates to presenting how the action will mainstream relevant cross-cutting issues. So please respond on this as well. This is important evaluation criteria. We will come back very soon in a few minutes when talking about the evaluation criteria. Such questions are very often perceived by applicants as less relevant, and that reflects at the end on the actual scoring of your application, because applicants either do not provide any information, or actually very, very simple information like, yes, we will take care about cross-cutting issues, or yes, we will pay attention on gender equality. This is not enough. When talking about the relevance of the action, we have much more space to actually justify the relevance, and we are justifying the relevance of the proposal in relation to specific themes and priorities and objectives of our call, and then in relation to the actual needs in the region, in the country, and etc. So the first point is relation of the proposal in relation to the call as such. This is again very much important, because here you justify why your project idea is relevant to the call. Why is important that your project idea and your proposal for the action should be funded? How you now contributes to the objectives and priorities and actual changes that call wants to produce. From the aspect of the applicants, very often is happening that this first question is perceived just as an introduction. And then it is very often written like, yes, our proposal is strongly contributing to the objectives of the call, and then the particular objective is just copy-pasted. And that's very often the only information provided. So in addition to that, you need to provide some explanation, some justification, in summary, how actually you are really contributing. Concerning the second part of the relevance, which relates to the particular needs and constraints of the target country, the situation is following. Here you are having very clear sub-questions, like guidelines, what you have to consider and present here. And again, please consider all of this as important. You will see how that reflects at the evaluation grid. So you need to provide information on the pre-project situation, describing actual problem. We will talk later on about defining the problem and the problem tree, etc., etc. And as you can see, here you already have like a support. In a reminder, include quantified data analysis where possible. However, what is happening? It is happening that the description of the situation is very often explained as economy is poor, unemployment is high. Then we have number of statistical data which are justifying this. But very often we are missing the analytical part, which should actually make a link between description of the situation and again why we want to implement the particular action. This is our analysis of the problem and the situation that should be addressed by the action. Then we are coming to the point whether any relevant strategies and plans are already in implementation. So whether we have some framework under which we can work, whether already some initiatives are designed at some higher levels, meaning in terms of the strategies, plans, communications, and so on. This is the point at which we have to reflect on the Western Balkan strategy, on the gender action plan, on the guidelines for civil society that I mentioned in the call, but also other relevant documents that are available, and of course important in justifying the situation and in justifying how our action, meaning our proposal for the action, is contributing to improving the situation. Here usually we have lots of good quality information provided in terms what particular strategies are existing and what they are planning or proposing. However, for a good quality of the concept note, we need to make a linkage with, again, our action. So do not just list them. Again, make a relation with your plans and intentions. Any previous experience, actions implemented, synergies with other initiatives have to be presented also in this part. Even, let's say that you have no previous experiences, or that you don't know at the moment for possible synergies, please search for them. That's a part of your analysis of the context. And it's important to be reflected because, again, it is part of the criteria for the evaluation. Potential synergies with other initiatives, in particular by the European Commission, is one of the very often criteria at which applicants at the concept note stage are losing scores, at least one score, because simply in that evaluation criteria there is such a question and you did not respond on it, and simply you can't get the highest score because you did not provide the relevant information. Okay, I see that some questions already pop up. So Boyan asked, at what stage of the whole application process do we provide detailed information about the co-applicants? Is it in the next stage while writing the application form? So Boyan, you actually you provide the information about the co-applicants at some point now in the at the stage of the concept note. However, actually the co-applicants have to be also registered in the PADR as well as the lead applicants, and please do this as soon as possible, not wait the just possible stage of the application form and update their data and so on. Also, even at the stage of the concept note, I would suggest of presenting briefly your partnership. So this is also, you know, the context, because that is how you actually came with the idea to implement the project. So you will not provide here detailed information, but definitely present your partnership as such. The detailed information about the co-applicants is exactly the subject of the full application form, and they are evaluated at the terms of the capacities at the stage of the full application form. However, data about them you can upload in Padder as soon as possible, and definitely you already is recommended to mention them at the level of the concept note. Milutin, the email address for questions at the web page is incorrect. welcome@tax.eu. I guess that it should be welcome. Sorry, in the confirmation mail we receive after registration. Okay, so I ask tax colleagues to well, to repair, simply to repair that. Okay, so let's talk further on the relevance of the action. The third part of this component relates to target groups and final beneficiaries. This is very often the part of the concept note which is deciding whether the application is passing to the full application, meaning to the second round, or not. Usually here, even you invested so many efforts in describing the situation, justifying the relevance, somehow this part tends to stay very general. Of course, this depends on the type of the proposal as such, but those proposals that are dealing with direct provision of service, meaning working directly with some specific individuals which are having specific needs, they really need to invest efforts to present the needs of the target group and final beneficiaries and how the proposal will respond on those needs. Here, in 2 bullet points, you have definitions from the application form on target groups and final beneficiaries. So target groups are those who will directly benefit from the action, while final beneficiaries will benefit from the action in the long-term level, meaning they will feel the effects of the action. But target group is actually the group that we are planning to work with them, to support them, to effect on different changes at different levels during the action implementation, and that is important. And very good defining of the target group also relates with the eligibility of costs, with whom you are going to work, whether you will succeed to select enough number of the target group members, etc., etc. In this form of the proposal, you are requested to present each of them some main description, to quantify them, to present their needs and constraints, of course, to make relevance in relation to the proposal, how they will be involved, and of course how the proposal, how this action will help to them. This is very much important, so you need to make that link. Let's give you one example from practice. I was providing technical assistance under one grant scheme, and I received the request from one grant beneficiary for the modification of their grant contract in relation to target group. They were planning, meaning they promised in their proposal that they will target 100 youth in certain age, etc., etc., by their action. when they started to implement their action, they faced the problem that they can't mobilize, select, whatever, more than 50 of them. In this situation at the implementation level, this is a serious problem, because they actually probably very much got some high scores because of the target of 100, not of the target of 50. Maybe if they were targeting 50, they wouldn't be among the winners. And so now they can't simply change, saying, well, you know, we simply cannot find 100 of them, so we will work with 50 of them. This also has implications on the question whether they would become a beneficiary, grant beneficiary, and it has a serious effects on actual costs. So this action cannot cost any more as it would cost for 100 target group members. So hopefully I succeeded to give you an hint why this is important and what you should actually take care. And at the end, you have a question about added value elements. This is the indication of any specific elements of the action in relation to promotion of public-private partnerships, innovation, best practices, and so on. Here at the end of this slide, in this table marked with blue, you have a question from the evaluation grid on added value. And why it's written here? It is written here because it is oftenly modestly written in the concept note applications, because again, it is not perceived by applicants as important. First of all, it is coming at the end. We are all already tired of writing. We exhausted our creativities. We analyzed a lot. There were lots of planning, lots of stress how to put everything into only few pages. And now we have a question on added value. So usually, again, is like with the cross-cutting component, it's written, yes, you know, we are going to work with our project will support persons with disabilities. So this is an added value. No, this is the purpose of your project. So what is the added value in project for which you are supporting persons with disabilities? So whether there are some other elements that are actually presenting innovation, some best practice, some new constructive partnership that will be developed, and so on. These are elements of the added value. Please note that in the context of this call, desired added value elements relates to cooperation with local authorities, relevant public bodies, and etc. And also, you already have information to check additional elements indicated also under the section 1.2 of the guidelines for applicants. So even the guidelines for applicants are helping to us now in this process. If let's say roughly we start with the idea of what can be the added value element of our proposal. As I mentioned now when responding on some of the questions, the last part of the concept note form is actually asking some basic information about applicant, co-applicant, and affiliated entities. However, here these slides present to us who are the all, let's say, main actors that are composing the action. So whenever possible, also reflect on the especially associates. And when talking about the contractors, please do not list names of the companies or persons that you want to hire, but clearly be clear about the parts of your action that will be subcontracted. And of course, please take care that you are not subcontracting the large number of activities and the whole significant activities. Like if you are going to implement a research, it's not the point that you just subcontract some agency to implement research for you. That is not desired, the change that we want to see. It is the actual active participation of the lead applicant, co-applicants, and affiliated entities, associates in the whole process as much as possible. So practically, we are subcontracting only in cases for something that we really do not have a capacity, or it's not really our business as such. Okay. There were also now some questions. Irmak asked, I did not get it that the concept note level, should we give the name of the CSOs as co-applicants in the project call, or should it be in the long application? Well, Irmak, you of course in the concept note have to present who is the lead applicant, who are the co-applicants, and if there are, who are the affiliated entities. So this is exactly what I now described. Boyan, according to you, while writing the narrative part of the concept note, after having the project activities, objectives, and outcomes listed, should we focus the narrative theoretical part of the concept note more on the actual implementation of the project, or the sustainability of the previously listed activities and objectives? So, Boyan, I'm not sure that I quite good understand that I understand your question. If you can clarify. The bit, because I'm not sure whether you're reflecting on the design of the action or on the relevance of the action. However, you have to provide information in relation to the implementation and, well, the sustainability of the previously listed activities and objectives. If you, for example, if your action is continuous of previously implemented action, reflect on that, meaning that you are building the new action on the results of the previously implemented action. So, of course, this reflects on the sustainability, but actually it's an upgrade of the previously something that was previously implemented. Maybe you will go into some new, for example, communities, or the same approach you will implement in some new sector, and so on. Dushka, okay, can you bring back last slide, please? Okay. And then I will come back the further questions. Sorry, I almost okay, just this. Sorry, I have some okay. So I'm not sure whether you wanted to see this on the partnership or added value elements. Anyhow, this presentation and recording will be also available online. Let's go further. Now I will just remind you on some technical requirements, and then I will talk about the evaluation, and then I will go back to some of the questions. Anyhow, I will respond on them in written form in case I do not succeed to respond on them all by the end of the presentation. So, concerning the technical requirements, please follow the template as it was explained, as you have explained in the concept note template. You have availability of 5 pages in total. However, 2 pages to provide information on design and 3 pages on the relevance. Take care that you do not write more out of that. Even now in that format, the all sub questions are pulled out as a guidelines, so you are not confused with actual the number of pages. You just start writing and filling in. Of course, except you must follow the template, take care about number of pages. It should be in certain font and should be written in English. Take care to sign declaration by the applicant, which is part of the template. And in the template as such, except those 5 pages that I'm actioning, meaning altogether it will be at the end more pages. 5 pages are relating only for the design of the action and for the relevance. You have some other questions in the tables that you have to fill in that are important, like to specify location. Do not forget that location should be Western Balkans and Turkey, and in relation to lot 11, Serbia and Kosovo. Duration, you have these requirements, 36 to 48 months. Also, the co-financing, take care about the amount you are requesting, calculations, and have in mind that later on this can vary, meaning later on in the process of the full application form submission, for up to 20%. So you can submit a detailed budget, which amount of the requested, which amount will not change for more 20%, either up or even lower. If you pointed out that co-financing will be your own contribution, you can replace that with other donors at any time. This is not a problem. However, those whom you presented as your partners now at the stage of the concept note, you can't so easily change at the level of the full application form unless some significant change occurred. And then again, if you justify the change, you have to find the same type of eligible applicants, let's say that shortly. The same is with duration. If you pointed out a certain timing, if you want to change it later on, please take care that you will have to provide justification why you are doing this. Concerning the final work in this process, you've done everything, and now the final step before submitting application is to actually check by yourself whether you fulfilled all the conditions. So follow simply the template to check once again. Did you respond on questions, number of pages, etc., etc. So evaluation of the concept notes. A few more minutes we will spend on the evaluation of the concept notes. So as you noticed, if you were present during the first webinar, you can receive the total score of the 50 as in line with the evaluation grid. However, the minimum of the scores that you have to receive should be at least 30. All those scores below 30 will be rejected. Once the whole process is completed, the ranking list will be prepared starting from the best score, and the borderline will be made on the double weight of the available amount per particular lot. Evaluation grid, you have available in the guidelines for applicants. So once you developed your project idea and transfer it into the application form, you can either by yourself or by assistance of the colleague that was not involved in the actual process, you can even make your own assessment. How this will help you? This will help you, first of all, as a reminder to check whether you have responded on all requirements. So here you see the maximum scores per each evaluation criteria. Now it will be much more clear considering what actually I was saying previously to you, what you should consider. And you see that practically each section of the concept note relates to the particular evaluation grid criteria. How the action is relevant in relation to the call, how it's relevant to the particular needs of the region and countries involved, how relates to target groups and final beneficiaries, how you described added value elements of your proposal. And then for the design, note that evaluation criteria 2.1, the scores are here doubling because of the importance, meaning how coherent is the overall design of the action? Does the proposal indicate the expected results to be achieved by the action? Does the intervention logic explain in a convincing way how the expected results will be achieved? So please consider that, check it. I know that lots of work is very often done in the last moment, but now at the concept note stage, really we have to measure and measure every possible score. So, are you here? Oh, sorry, something then happened with you haven't seen. It seems I was in clicking. I made some problem with the presentation. I'm very sorry. It seems like so many things now blocked. Okay. I'm very sorry. I will now try to um, I will try to respond on the questions. Since we are coming to the end, I'm very sorry. I see that yes. Can we start over? Sorry, Violetta says webinar is good tool, but you should know to manage it at any time. Yes. However, well, I'm very sorry. I haven't succeeded, and I have lost a presentation at some point, and I simply don't know how to actually. At one point says stop, at one pause, but okay. In the description of the action section, what is the ratio between the chapters required? For example, how much space should we allocate for the sets of the activities? So there is not such a, please note, there is not such a rule or a formula. It's up to you to decide how you will present the information. What is important? It is important that actually you manage to balance the importance among all sections. So Stanka is asking the concept note template front page. Should we fill the missing information of the call? Stanka, I'm not sure what is the question here. If you can be more, if you can be more precise. So Fatmir says important part of presentation was okay. So thank you, Fatmir, for this support. We have a few more minutes, and if you give me time, I will try to give the presentation back. Just be patient, like a minute. So, did I succeed it? Okay, so some of the participants are saying that the latest slide they saw was the slide 20. So this was the one in which I was actually presenting, once again reminding who are the main actors of the action, pointing that in the third part of the concept note form, you have to present information primarily, well, obligatory on applicant, co-applicant, and affiliated entities. Then further on was a slide on the technical requirements. As a reminder, what you should consider, not only concerning that we said about restrictions of the pages, but also other information you are providing and which are important. Even this was emphasized in the guidelines for applicants. Here once again reminder, take care about the location and the justification for changes when we talk about duration and partners as such, and of course this rule that you can change the total amount of co-financing for up to 20%. In overall, what is written in the concept note can actually not be changed at the level of the full application form. So actually, it is of course expected that you follow what is written in the concept note. And also, please note one very important change that occurred, and this is for those that have already been participating in such calls for proposals. Now, at the stage of the evaluation of the full application form, the evaluation committee can decide to evaluate again the relevance of the proposal as such. So you should really be careful to stay in line while developing further on full application that is based on the description of the idea and presentation of the relevance as it was in the concept note. And these are the reminders for final checks before the submission of your application. And then it was this whole part about the evaluation of the concept notes concerning the highest scores that you can receive, the minimum requirement, but possibility that minimum will not be, in case of good quality of the concept notes 30, it can be much more higher. Here are the reminders how this is actually calculated concerning the borderline, meaning the doubling of the available amount per particular lot. And of course, at the end of the process, all those who applied, you will receive in written notification whether your application is scored enough to be invited to submit a full application in the second round, or you will be unfortunately rejected. And here are this is the presentation of the evaluation grid of the concept note, the actual question and criteria, and the top maximum scores that you can receive. This information is available in the guidelines for applicants, so you can consider it for your internal assessment. Okay. So I actually came to the end of the presentation. Thank you very much for your patience. As I said, you will have available presentation online. Also, you still have enough time to submit questions on which I will respond further on. And we are actually having on our schedule the last webinar at 4 o'clock about more defining the problems and defining of the objectives and actually all the preparatory actions that are needed for the prior we start actually of writing the concept note. So Daniela, but also some other people are asking where the presentation will be available. So the presentation will be available certainly at the Taxo website. So if not downloaded today, it will be definitely in a few days. Questions and answers will be published at the Europe 8 web page together with all other questions asked until now. So let's see, I have a few more minutes before actually we finish, but they're all about the presentation. Yeah, the question about the maybe some links to more elaborate documents on theory of change. I will prepare that for Taxo team. So they will then publish some of more links on some websites or documents that you can use further on. Okay. Sorry, Boyan asked, can I open another presentation from the previous? I am simply by now afraid that I will mix everything. We are coming anyhow to the end of the presentation. Okay, there are lots of thank you, and thank you once. Thank you once again. So those that want to learn and hear more, let's participate in the last webinar that will be run at 4 o'clock. If not, I wish you a great success with preparation of your concept notes for the beginning in structuring very good partnerships, definitely, and successful and creative process in defining project ideas and, of course, development actions and interventions. So I wish you all the best. Bye-bye.